Hey there everyone, and welcome to a GameXplain review. I'm your host Ash Paulson, and today I'm joined by Andre Seegers to discuss his overall thoughts on the Nintendo Labo Vehicle Kit, also known as ToyCon 03. So normally this is where I'd say let's get started, but this is kind of a different thing, huh Andre?
Just a bit, yeah. So normally we don't do reviews off the cuff. We, sit down, we script them, narrate over them, then we find the footage for it. This one's a little bit different for any number of reasons, but the main one is I sat down, started writing the review, and I'm like, this just feels weird. I'm writing like our typical type of review for a product not aimed at me or my demographic. It's very much aimed at kids, even though I still had a lot of fun with it, and we'll get to that. So it just felt weird to to approach a review as we normally would and give it like our official verdict and everything. Instead, I felt this would be a better way of handling it, like a more casual discussion, particularly with you, because you had experience building the previous Labo kits with me, so I thought it'd be good to bounce off of you, as you may have some idea of what to expect, or what you may want to know about the Labo product.
Right. No, my hand still very much remember that building process and that the collective 13-hour stream we did building the first two kits.
Well, let me tell you, if we had streamed this one, it would have been very similar, so...
Wow, okay. Well, that seems like a great jumping off point then. Why don't we talk about the build process first, because that already sounds pretty complicated.
Yeah, so I won't spend too much time on this, because if you build Labo or watch someone else build Labo, like us on our stream, then you'll already know the general process. It's the exact same thing here. In this case, there are, I believe, 5 main parts you need to build, including the 3 vehicle parts, like the car wheel, the submarine cockpit, and the flight control stick. I don't know what the official names are of all these. But then you also need to build the foot pedal as well, which controls the speed of all 3 vehicles, and then you need to build a magic key itself. So, to get started, you only need the pedal, the wheel, and the magic key. You can save the rest for later. But I say that very loosely because that's a 5-hour build process you're looking at right there. 4 to 5 hours.
Man.
So you're looking at 5 hours before you even play this game in really any capacity. Once you get beyond that point, though, then that's when the door opens up and you can start having fun with it. Though you do need to build the plane and then the submarine if you want to experience the full product in its in its entirety. Because the game is built around swapping between those 3 vehicles as you explore this giant open world.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sounds as though you really need to pace yourself during this building process too, because I know that when you and I were building the first 2 kits, we were like, oh, whatever, they say to pace yourself, but we can handle this, and no, we really should have paced ourselves.
You really should. I didn't because I'm a fool, but I built most of it I built the first part within that 5-hour span. I was watching my roommate play Spider-Man. I'm like, man, my roommate's having way more fun than I am right now. But to be fair, I've been through this build process before, so the novelty has worn off a bit. But what hasn't worn off, I will say, is the magic of seeing this pile of cardboard turn into these intricate contraptions that work in ways that still kind of confound me. Like, I was putting together the flight stick. I'm like, how in the hell this trigger's going to work? And sure enough, it works. You pull the trigger, and you can fire missiles from your plane. And, then the car wheel, the pedal, how you put rubber bands to apply resistance. So it actually does feel like you're pushing down the pedal. Or even the submarine, how you have to turn these wheels to make your submarine, to control the propellers on the submarine in order to control where it moves. Like, it still blows my mind how this works. And my hat's off to the development team who sat there and came up with how to make this, cardboard turn into these really intricate machines. It's really impressive, and the magic of that is still really cool.
Well, now I know you and I had a couple of slight mishaps during the building process where we put something on a little wrong and had to take a couple of steps back. Did you have that experience here at all?
No, there's only one time I got confused, and that was really my own doing. Like, I was just getting worn out from the build process.
Gotcha.
But no, it felt very straightforward, and I don't know if that's just more experience on our end or my end, or if the game actually walked me through it a little bit better than before, or maybe the fact that we didn't stream it for 8 hours. But it was a very straightforward process, and I didn't really have any issues. So.
All right, well, it sounds like you've had nothing but positive things to say about the gameplay experience itself, so why don't we jump into that and talk about the software side of ToyCon 03 and talk about the gaming side of it.
Okay, so ultimately the product itself, at least from a UI perspective, or even a general layout perspective, is almost identical to previous Labo. The build process, the way it walks you through it, and then the menu screens all look identical to how they have before. And then, as with other products, there are a variety of modes you can go into once you have once you built everything. And the thing is, most of them are still pretty shallow, and that's kind of like been the downfall to Labo, I would say, so far. Is once you build the product, the replay value you get out of it doesn't quite match up with how long it took you to get to that point.
Right.
So now that we're on Labo Kit 3, the novelty isn't quite there anymore, unless it's your first Labo Kit, in which it will definitely be. However, with all that being said, The main difference this time is one of those modes, being the adventure mode, feels like an actually fleshed out game as opposed to all the other Labo kits. We're talking a 5 to 6 hour adventure in which you're presented with an open world, like this giant island you can explore however you want. There are all kinds of tasks spread around the regions. There are, I think, 10 regions. There are roughly 8 tasks, or there are 8 tasks in each one of them, whether it's pushing a golf ball into a hole, shooting down balloons, helping all kinds of citizens out, like a guy who lost his sled, or helping a cheerleader get to her cheerleading practice by driving her to it, or looking for a Sphinx's missing head. There are all kinds of things to do. So what this game reminds me of, this is going to be a weird way of putting it, I think, but it's a weird combination of Breath of the Wild's openness combined with the mechanics of Pilot Wings in in terms of like controlling vehicles, along with the chillness of Animal Crossing. It's a very chill open world. There is no story here, kind of like Breath of the Wild.
Right.
I'm joking.
Good point.
Yeah. So there's no real pressure here. You can take your time doing everything. Most of the tasks aren't particularly challenging. Some of them are incredibly simple, like using your windshield wipers to wipe off water. Some are a little bit tricky, like some of those animals you have to track down, like these rabbits you have to pick up can be really tricky. But for the most part, it's all a very relaxed experience, and I like that.
So what do you think it is about that's so different from the first two Toy-Con games, in the sense that there's really no rush there either? I mean, you can play those you can do the mission mode in the robot game at your leisure, pretty much. So what do you think it is about this one that makes it feel more laid back and makes it feel so much more rewarding?
I mean, the fact that it's a giant open world, that's really what it is, I think. The fact that you have this environment you can explore. It's fun to explore and to find everything you can do within this world. And even then, it has sandbox qualities too. Like, one of the cool things is your car, or any of your vehicles, have a variety of ways you can play with them. The car in particular has the most, in which you can not only drive around using the wheel and gas pedal, but it also has a couple of levers that you can use to equip different functions. Like, I mentioned the windshield wipers already, but you can throw bombs as well to knock down trees, or blow up rocks. There are saw blades you can also use to chop down trees or cut down signs if you want. There's a nozzle in which you can refuel yourself at these gas stations scattered around the world, because you need to refuel if you want to keep going. So it's just kind of fun to just explore, take in the sights. And really the key thing is, getting back to the sandbox qualities, it's just fun to drive around. Like, that's why it reminds me of Pilot Wings. Like, Pilot Wings had missions to do, like very clear-cut missions, but at the same time, it was fun just to control the vehicles. And I got the same sense here, particularly using these cardboard contraptions, which, as silly as it may be, like, I really enjoyed using them. It reminded me a little bit of Mario Kart Wii. I'm one of the people who actually liked using the Wii wheel, and that was even more the case here. But I actually quite liked using the steering wheel to control or to drive around, or using the fly stick to pilot the plane, or even the submarine. And we'll have more to say about that in a second, I think. But it was novel using the wheels to spin your propellers in order to propel yourself in a particular direction.
Well, it definitely sounds like it, and it also sounds as though, just in general, that this Labo kit in particular would be like the game enthusiast's Labo kit to get, in the sense that it feels the most like a video game.
It's definitely the closest. Like, again, it's still geared towards children, so I don't know if I'd recommend adults go out of their way to pick it up. Even if I still have fun with it, I'm still not fully sure if it warranted the 8-hour build session for everything. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I had fun with it myself, and if I were a kid, I can only imagine that would have been amplified considerably.
All right, well, it doesn't sound as though we're going to get away with a little criticism, though, because you said something just a minute ago that sounded a little ominous about the submarine mode.
The submarine sucks, straight up.
Oh man,
it's not that fun to use. It's slow. It's a little bit awkward being underwater, and it's just a little bit confusing to control. Basically, if you want to go forward, you just aim the propellers facing backwards, so that's pretty straightforward. It's when it comes to turning that things get a little bit complicated, because you have to kind of angle them individually separate from one another, and that's just tricky and not that fun to do. And it's not enjoyable to really, by comparison to the car and the plane, to really navigate these underwater environments. Now, with that said, it's also by far the least utilized vehicle of the three. They're really only, even though like the island is surrounded by water, obviously, there's only a couple of points that have anything of interest. Most of it is just empty, so you really don't have to use a submarine that often. But when you do, or whenever I did, I'm like, I just want to go back to using the plane or the car instead. So it mixes things up, but at the same time, it's like, man, it was kind of a waste building this submarine when really the plane
Yeah.
and the car were far more compelling. But you do have to complete the submarine if you want to complete the open world, where you finish off everything in the open world.
Right, okay. And then once you do finish that open world, do you still feel, is there any reason to keep going back, or is that kind of, once you've done that, you've exhausted everything there is to do in the software portion of the game?
So once you complete all the main tasks in the open world, you do earn bonuses along the way, like little upgrades for your vehicle that you can equip. More like power-ups, because they only work for a limited amount of time or until you switch vehicles, basically. But once you finish all the main tasks on the island, you then unlock an unlimited fuel option, which is kind of nice if you don't want to refuel up, because that does take a while, actually. Every time you stop by a gas station, it's a good 30-second process to fill up your gas tank, which, by the way, is really difficult to line up right. So that's part of the trickiest thing in the game, is just lining up at the gas pump. But then, so once you finish all the objectives, you then unlock another set of hidden collectibles that appear around the world, which you can then go and try and find them all. And apparently there's some other secret thing unlocks after all of that, but I don't know what it is. I haven't finished that part yet, so...
Cool. So then that sounds like that's, there's really a lot to do in the open world, which is awesome, but are there any other modes associated with this game, or is it just the open world mode?
Yeah, so Adventure is just one of the modes, the primary mode, but there are other things for you to play around with, like slot cars, which is both multiplayer and single player, where you just use a gas pedal and you race around a racetrack. If you go too fast, you fly off the track, kind of like real slot cars. There's a paint studio where you can paint your vehicle. I painted mine GameXplain blue, of course.
Of course.
There is Rally, where it's basically a checkpoint-based race, where you can choose from one of a few different racetracks, and you have to race through the gates within a time limit. It's fun. It's probably something you'll only play around with a few times, and I found it a little bit annoying because the checkpoint arrows that point you toward the next checkpoint are the vaguest arrows of all time, and really only vaguely point you in the loose direction where the next checkpoint is. So it was a little bit tricky to find each one, so I didn't find it to be that fun. And then there's Battle Mode, which reminded me a bit of the Monkey Fight mode from Super Monkey Ball, in which you and your opponent are in an arena in a car, and you punch each other using arms that extend from your vehicle. There are also power-ups you can collect, and you're just trying to whittle down their health until they die. And the best of 3, or wherever you set it to, wins. So all these modes, they're fun little diversions, but they're about as shallow as a typical Labo mode, I would say. So those are really more your standard Labo experience, whereas the Adventure mode is truly the standout of the Labo kit, and really makes this kit what's worthwhile.
Gotcha. Now, in a technical sense, I know that you and I had not major issues, but a few issues with the controls not registering properly in the first 2 kits, especially with the robot kit, like when we were trying to walk around and, there would be interference once in a while. Did you have anything like that in the vehicle kit? Did everything work technically well?
No, it was pretty much flawless. The only time I had a major issue was when I was using the Magic Key, which contains a Joy-Con, which is how you swap vehicles. You plug into whichever control console you want to use for that vehicle. Is once I didn't plug it in all the way, so it wasn't registering the controls correctly. But once I plugged it in, it solved the issue. And I was constantly impressed with how well these cardboard contraptions worked, with how responsive they were, and just how fun they were to use. Like, again, I enjoyed driving around, flipping into reverse using the little lever, or pulling on the ripcord to get a speed boost, or using the flight stick for the plane, and like dodging buildings as I'm leaning left to right with it. Like, it all worked remarkably well, to the point where I'm actually looking forward to trying out in Mario Kart once Mario Kart gets the update for these controls. I don't think I'll play competitively with them, but I could see them being a lot of fun. So, and really, it makes me want a Palawings game now that uses these things.
Yeah.
Like, these are really fun, and I could see them doing a lot more with them in a more serious context, so...
So you think the base that's been built here is a good foundation for an even more in-depth game next time, based on the controls that you've been feeling here? I
think it's possible, yeah. I don't think they should build a game solely around these controls, just for not everyone's going to want to use them. But as an option, absolutely. I think a Palawings game would be a great option for these. So yeah, again, I was just constantly impressed with how well they worked and how well the build quality of the Toy-Cons ended up being. Much like in the past Toy-Cons too, but I didn't have any of the control issues that we had with the robot kits, so...
Gotcha. Okay, well, anything else overall that you want to touch on about the Nintendo Labo Vehicle Kit?
Not too much. I think we covered it overall. Like, I had a really fun time playing with it, even if it probably isn't quite worth the 8-hour build session for an adult. Like, as a kid, I think this is probably the best Labo kit that there is. It has more depth than any of them, far more than the robot kit, and it was just a lot of fun in general. I think it offers a lot for the money. And really, if I had a kid, it's one I would probably get them. So,
well, that's hard to argue with. You already answered one of my questions, which was, do you think this is the best overall Labo kit yet? So I'll ask you my next question, or my final question, which is, this is a review at the end of the day. So, if you had to give it a rating, do you want to give it a rating, or what would it be?
Oh man, so So again, I didn't want to do the usual trappings of a review, but I don't think it quite works in this case. So I'm not going to put on the official emoji for it. I will say though, as an adult, I liked it. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. But again, take that with a grain of salt. Ultimately, your kids probably can feel very different than how an adult did. So, so for me, I enjoyed it, but I think a kid could get even more value out of it. But, the fact that I had fun with it myself really says a lot about the quality of this kit. Or about my mentality as an adult. I'm not quite sure which.
Alright, well, as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please hit that like button and follow us on social media using the links in the video description below. Otherwise, keep it on GameXplain for more on Nintendo Labo and all things gaming.